What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Cornelia, back with another episode of Black News, a podcast where we break down current events, hot topics, and local stories involving Black people. Now let's get into it. When I tell y'all I am really excited about this topic, this first the topic of discussion, I am so thrilled and it just emotional about it. If I'm keeping it a buck, I'm really emotional about this. And I don't even watch baseball. And I know once I said baseball, y'all probably thinking and assuming correctly, we talking about the Negro Leagues, baby. We're talking about how the Negro League players have now been added to Major League Baseball stats. I have been so emotional about this whole ordeal, and I've been trying to figure out why. Especially, again, I don't watch baseball. I can tell you, I know the game, right? But I don't watch it and have not watched it as much as I have watched historically a sport like basketball. But I have been actively aware and present in Black people within the sport. Okay. The Ken Griffey Jr.'s, the Darryl Strawberries, the Barry Bonds. I knew that whole wave. While I may not have been locked in watching all of the games because they be long. Okay. They don't be action packed now, but I know it. But I have, and I do know about the Negro Leagues. And so, and I be saying this, and I think this is a perfect example. Sometimes when I get interested in a topic, I just be all in on the topic, like all in, locked in, completely in. And this can be throughout different times in my life, different subjects or whatnot. At one point, I was super locked in on Negro League baseball and history. Like to the point where I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get to Kansas City to go to the Negro League Museum. Like I was all in, mainly because I forget what I was watching or what I was reading, but I was so triggered by the fact that Negro League players were, up until present day, still being excluded from Major League Baseball stats and the Major League Baseball conversation. And to me, there was a blatant and a blaring discrepancy with those numbers. Regardless of how people historically have categorized the Negro Leagues, and some people saying that it wasn't equivalent to Major League Baseball, which is incorrect and which has been proven now. We'll get to that in a minute. But just the simple, sheer level of athleticism that Black people hold alone, to me, there was nothing that anybody could ever have said to make me or anyone believe that the Negro Leagues were not equivalent or better in regards to talent than the major leagues. There's nothing you can say to make me believe that, which was kind of what continued to lead to my rabbit hole search in history and research about Negro Leagues. I want to know who was the best, who was doing what, where they played, what years. You got names like Cool Papa Bell. Like I want to know who these people are. And I was doing just general research about it. So already I feel like I had more knowledge about the Negro Leagues than I had about Major League Baseball, which is kind of crazy. So with that in mind, and going back a little bit, when Soul of the, remember that movie on HBO that came out in the 90s, or maybe it was in the 90s, 2000s? Soul of the Game with Delroy Lindo and Blair Underwood. Child, that was in, I was locked in back then. So we were all familiar with it at different levels when it comes to our knowledge about it. But one thing I have been keeping my eye on is the conversation that has been happening for this last however many years about merging or adding Negro League stats to Major League Baseball stats. I've been really watching this. So this past week when it was announced that those stats 75% worth. Let me add that in, because so far in the research, there is still a chunk that has not been analyzed. So the numbers could change even more. But this past week, it was announced that they finally did it, and it changed up the rankings about who the bests are in different categories. And now the picture for Major League Baseball players, as far as demographics, is totally different. And when I tell y'all, people mad. And by people, y'all know what I mean. And the only time people, or only way people could be mad, if they're genuinely not baseball fans. And I'm saying this as someone who is not even a baseball fan. Or I even take it a step further. Only people mad are those who have a level of cognitive dissonance, or people lack common sense, or you just straight up you just a bigot. With that said, let me read y'all some of the changes that have happened and add some context. Now, before I even read that, Josh Gibson, who played the majority of his career with the Homestead Grays in the Negro Leagues, according to stats, because he died so young at the age 35 or 36 in the early to mid 1900s, that people who are living today, unless you are one of those, it's like maybe a couple Negro League players that are still alive who still have recollection of how Josh Gibson played. Josh Gibson is the best baseball player that ever lived. I'm going to say that again. According to the actual numbers, Josh Gibson, who was a Negro League player who died of a stroke. He also had a brain tumor back then, so he did not live a very long life. He struggled. But he is now the best baseball player that ever lived. I am so emotional about that. Y'all, I just can't. Okay. I love it. So I'm going to read y'all some snippets of the press releases that were out. And then I'm going to jump to a video clip and play that for y'all that breaks down more specifically the importance of this and kind of speaks to the naysayers. So first, let me jump into some of these the statements from the press release. So it says, today's announcement, and by today that means the day it came out, is the first major step that makes the achievements of the players of the Negro Leagues available to fans via the official historical record. The statistics of more than 2,300 Negro League ball players from 1920 to 1948, including this era's 3 living Negro League players, that's Bill Greason, he's 99, Willie Mays is 93, and Ron Teasley is 97. They launched today in a newly integrated Major League Baseball database. Y'all go to the MLB site if you care. It's very interesting to look at. It combines 7 different Negro leagues from 1920 to 1948. Sidebar, because there were many variations of that, total of 7 throughout different time spans within that block that I mentioned. And this effort would allow fans to view the statistics and records of Negro League alumni as easily as all other historical Major League players. So let me share this in regards to batting average. Josh Gibson's .466 batting average for the 1943 Homestead Grays is now the highest mark in Major League history, followed by fellow Negro League standouts, Charlie Chino Smith, who hit a .451 in 1929 for the New York Lincoln Giants. And these 2 batting averages now eclipse the .440 by Hall of Famer Hugh Duffy in 1894. Slugging. 4 slugging marks now eclipse the .863 by Barry Bonds in 2001. They were by Josh Gibson in 1937, Mule Suttles in 1926, Josh Gibson again in 1943, and Charlie Chino Smith in 1929. On base percentage, OBS, Josh Gibson in 1943 and Charlie Chino Smith in 1929 entered the top 5 in the category, led by Barry Bonds. On base plus slugging, OPS. 2 Josh Gibson seasons in 1937 and 1943 will now lead the all-time category, surpassing the previous mark held by Barry Bonds in 2004. which is now slightly third ahead. Again, Charlie Chino Smith. Earned run average, another legend that we mentioned that I did not mention yet. But if you know anything about Negro Leagues or even have slight conversations about it, you know Satchel Paige, one of the best pitchers ever, which was now included in the stats. Hall of Famer Satchel Paige he now ranks third with his 1.01 ERA for the 1944 Kansas City Monarchs of the Negro American League. And fun fact about Satchel Paige, we know Jackie Robinson was the first black man who integrated Major League Baseball. Satchel Paige was one of the best players, Negro League players. Some people say that he was better than Jackie Robinson, but Satchel Paige was way older. He was like 42 when he got drafted eventually into Major League Baseball. I believe he maybe had been third or fourth to go into the league. He was the oldest rookie of the year ever in Major League Baseball because that first year that he was drafted, he was in his 40s, but it was like the gazillionth year that he's been playing baseball. And he still had the arm enough to help the Cleveland Indians win their only Major League Baseball title, if I'm not mistaken. That is their only one. And it was because Satchel Paige. More. And this might be stat heavy. I'm so sorry if you don't care, but y'all, we got to celebrate that. Hey, baby, we taking over. Okay. Batting average. Josh Gibson now holds the all-time lead with the .372 average in 2,255 at-bats, surpassing Hall of Fame Ty Cobb's career. Also on that list now, batting average, Oscar Charleston is number 3rd, Judd Wilson 5th, Turkey Stearns number 6, Buck Leonard 8th to join the top 10. These are Negro League players, y'all. Top 10, baby. We half of the top 10. Slugging, again, Josh Gibson 1st, Mule Suttles 5th, Turkey Stearns 6th, Oscar Charleston 7th. OBS, again, Josh Gibson now ranks 3rd all time. On OPS, I mentioned, Josh Gibson is now leading the category ahead of Hall of Famer Babe Ruth. Now, let me say a couple things, and then I'm going to cut to the video. So a lot of times, especially in conversations like this, people try to do whatever they can to discredit, right? And that's a part of cognitive dissonance. People try to bend their minds to be able to justify why something should not be. But in this case, we actually have records of Negro League players playing against in exhibitions Major League Baseball players, the white players. And there have been long histories of interactions between the two groups. And let me double add that the Negro Leagues just wasn't a place for black players. A lot of Latino players were playing in the Negro Leagues in the United States because they also had no other opportunities. And some of them got added to the leaderboards as well. But let me just say, people have been saying over the past, week and describing Josh Gibson as the Black Babe Ruth. But in my research, okay, there have been, or there is, or was, it was widely known that people actually refer to Babe Ruth as the white Josh Gibson. So no, he wasn't the black Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth was the white Josh Gibson. And in regards to Satchel Paige, Joe DiMaggio himself was quoted to say Satchel Paige was the best pitcher that he has ever faced. And everybody know Joe DiMaggio, okay? Everybody, whether you know baseball or not, sports or not, you have heard the name Joe DiMaggio, even if it was in connection with dating Marilyn Monroe. You know the name. Hey, Joe said it himself. So with that in mind, let me play this quick clip from one of the Major League Baseball radio shows and podcasts that has been out apparently for years. I ain't watching it or listening because I only follow baseball like that, but I tuned in during this moment, and this pretty much it just provides a good summary about what's happening.
This is what I just described.
So let's just analyze that. Look, I don't want to get involved in this stuff. Everyone has a right to think and feel however you think and feel. I've spent 25 years not telling you how to think and feel, and I'm not going to start now. but I'm trying to logically understand a reason why someone would be opposed to this. Like, forgetting the emotion, forgetting the whatever social or political point it is you want to make. What would be the logical reason for being opposed to this?
The most logical reason that I saw was there's no way the Negro Leagues were equivalent to the major leagues, to the American and National League.
And what is the answer to that?
That argument, that standpoint is unequivocally false, proven by any reasonable standard of measure that you would like to use. However you want to go there, I can do a list for 2 hours disproving any of those arguments. I mean, there is no question that the Negro Leagues were equivalent to the American and National Leagues. I'm going to read for you a short list. Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, Willie Mays, Don Newcomb, Henry Aaron, Ernie Banks, Frank Robinson, Maury Wills. What do they all have in common?
I think we all know what they all have in common, yeah.
From 1949 to 1962, 11 of the 14 MVPs in the National League were black. If the best players in the world at that point were black in the Negro Leagues, they became the best players in the world in the National League, right? So there's no obvious reason to believe that the best players in the Negro Leagues wouldn't be the best ones in the major leagues, because we see it here. Thus, there's no reason to believe that the average ones wouldn't also have been average. But we can go further. All right, we have 50 years of exhibition data, during which point the Negro Leagues playing Major League Baseball teams in exhibitions were 33 games above 500. There is no question that the level of play in the Negro Leagues, based upon the players that transferred, if you will, or the players at the time that the Negro Leagues basically ceased to be, and Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, were great immediately in the big leagues, but also the fact that we have more than 500 games of data with the teams actually playing each other. So if you don't believe the Negro Leagues were equivalent to that of the American and National Leagues, it is a deeply ahistorical opinion to have.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, and you're exactly the right person to have this conversation, because you actually know. Other people just say things they don't know because they have some desire to say them, motivated by whatever it is that is motivating it. But you actually know the truth of this, and you just said it in a way that I think is irrefutable. Like, what is the counter argument to that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm an open-minded person. I'd like to hear what the counter argument is to what Hembo just said.
And so I'm going to wrap up with this, because that was very well stated, and by someone who is an analyst of the sport, who has done research, is a fan of the sport, and understands numbers, stats, and just has common sense, because let's keep it a buck, right? But I also want to add another layer to this, because we immediately see that once you merge the stats, how a lot of the Major League Baseball players were overtaken, if you will, by numbers that were greater and just a little more, and they just got overtaken. That's another way to put it. They got overtaken, and they were overtaken by a group of men who were playing baseball during Jim Crow. So it's one thing to play in a professional league and to have the luxuries of that, because regardless of the time frame, whether it was back in the day or current present day, y'all know professional sports has a level of luxury that is afforded to the players, but not when you are playing within the Negro Leagues during the Jim Crow South, and you are playing under threats of violence, lynching. You can't stop at rest stops. When you travel by bus, you had to plan out the travel specifically so that you could only stop at certain places, because they did not take or accept or like the idea of black baseball players being within their space. They couldn't find adequate lodging. They had to only stay not in hotels, but in boarding houses that were specifically for black people. Couldn't eat lunch wherever, couldn't even use the bathroom wherever, had to find a way to be able to play at different stadiums. They weren't making a lot of money, so a lot of them had to supplement their income by going to the Dominican Republic to play. Also found out that they were over in China and introducing baseball in that particular country. Like, they were doing all of this, operating under the oppression of the Jim Crow South, and they still were able to overtake Major League Baseball stats. I am so emotional. I could bust out crying right now. Like, and y'all, I just can't imagine what it was like to feel like you are better than someone and that you can perform just as good as them, but you were not afforded the same opportunity and felt like no matter what you did, just because you are a Black person, it doesn't matter. And to think that all of the hard work that you did will go unrecognized. Nobody will remember. I'm doing all of this for nothing. Josh Gibson was buried in an unmarked grave. He didn't get a headstone or even something that on his grave until the 1970s. And then to fast forward, in some cases, for some Negro League players, 100 years later, and to now have all of your accomplishments recognized, I can't even imagine. Like, I don't know why this is so emotional for me, but I'm glad that it's happening. And baby, when they add that next 25% of stats to the list, they gonna be pissed. That's what you get for not letting Black people play the sport when you should have let them play. And I hope this sparks research and just a level of curiosity for baseball fans and just sports fans in general. Because what a gift it is now to think that somebody was the best, and all of a sudden you find out that a man that you never even heard of was actually the one. He was actually the man. Like, child, I'm about to be crying all day. With that said, let me know your thoughts about this. Obviously, I am uber excited. But were you excited as well? Or have you not heard anything about it? Do you not care? Are you now going to be a fan of Major League Baseball? And are you going to be like me? I'm about to, listen, I was online trying to look up me some Negro League outfits. Okay. When y'all see me out here with a Kansas City Monarchs bomber jacket, or a New York Black Dodgers outfit, or a Homestead Grays t-shirt, you know what it is. Okay, you already know what it is. Let me know though. Hit me up and let me know your thoughts about it. You can find me on social media at Canelia. So I don't know if you all have been watching the conversations surrounding the Fearless Fund, or if you have never even heard of Fearless Fund. But just to add some context, because there have been some movements in regards to this that I want to talk about. But the Fearless Fund was basically a Black woman led venture capitalist fund that was mainly responsible for funding Black women within that space, Black women business owners. And as y'all know, and I don't have the percentages right in front of me, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe less than like 0.5% of Black women receive funding of any kind within the venture capitalist space. So this is a very specific and targeted fund that is needed within the Black community, more specifically for Black women. Well, the conservative group and the man that was responsible for leading the charge around dismantling affirmative action in the United States, he at one point set his eyes towards the Fearless Fund and sued on the grounds that it was a discriminatory program that again, discriminated against other groups that weren't Black women. Went to court, lawsuits back and forth. It went to the Court of Appeals recently this past week, and essentially, per the article in news reports, the U.S. Federal Court of Appeals suspended the program's grant program for Black women business owners, ruling that the conservative group is likely to prevail in its lawsuit, claiming that the program is discriminatory. So we talk a lot on the podcast and in our spaces on social media within our friend groups about what is happening in America. There is a feeling of doom and gloom that has been creeping in for the past, I feel like, let's keep it real, since Barack Obama was elected. And before I continue on, I would love to just add this, and I heard this on a podcast. So I think it may have been the Angela Rye, Andrew Gillum, and Tiffany Cross podcast, where Andrew Gillum mentioned he's not even sure that any of this that would be happening as far as people trying to roll back policies and things that benefit people of color. He has a feeling that none of this would be happening if Barack Obama would have never even been elected, because that was the signal to people that was the end for whiteness. That's just what people probably thought. But with this level of doom and gloom that has been riding in over these past 20 years or so, things like this should be a extreme red flag signal to us about what is in store and in what's to come. Because if one single man can lead the charge with his partners in crime, literally and figuratively, to dismantle efforts and programs nationwide, specific, targeted, that benefit people of color, at some point it's going to branch beyond being about people of color, and it's going to continue to affect other human beings in other ways. Meaning, with the level or the amount of conservative federal judges that have been appointed, with the majority of the United States Supreme Court being conservative, Justice Sotomayor, an article recently came out where she said that she is literally feeling terribly about what's possibly to come. So she's seeing it firsthand about what's about to be happening. There is no doubt in my mind that we all should be paying attention to the next tier of dismantling, which means you still got things like Brown versus Board of Education, segregation related bills, marriage equality, whether that's gay marriage, interracial marriage. There are no limits anymore about what is on the table for dismantling. And I know people hear things like that and they be like, you over exaggerating. It's literally happening right in front of our faces. And I'm wondering, and I don't like to think like this, but I try to sometimes think about the United States in the perspective of world history, present and past and future. At some point, all leaders fall. They fall. Empires fall. Strongholds fall. Power changes. The hands of power, it shifts. That is something that is a tale as old as time. I'm wondering now if we as Americans should not accept the fact or start to look around and wonder if we just so happen to be born and alive during the time where the power dynamic as far as the United States' place in the world has shifted, and we become the even more terrible place that we read about in history books that other countries had to endure or that they were a part of, if that makes sense. Like, is this our time to fall? Is this America's time to fall? Because at some point, empires fall. And the people that are alive during that regime, they are a part of it. Is this the time? Yes, we can fight like hell. Yes, we should continue. Y'all know I'm all about the voting because I ain't the one. I'm not one of those people when they be like, voting don't matter. Yeah, or why they keep trying to take your voting rights away. And even if you think certain elections don't matter, we know for a fact that local elections matter. I'm going to go up there with my damn ballot, okay? I got to be having my little book, pencil line scratched all up and through that. But I am honestly wondering if we as Americans and Black Americans, yes, we can continue fighting, and Black women, y'all know we be saving everybody, but while we doing that, start to mentally prepare and ask ourselves, is this that time in American history? Because again, if somebody can be so spiteful and be so focused on taking down a small venture capitalist fund led by Black women that provides grants to Black women, which only amounts to less than 0.5% of funding towards that particular group. If somebody can be so focused on taking that down, what makes you think that everything else is just going to be as is? They already took away DEI. You can't no longer abortion rights, whatever side that you on. And that's not necessarily a Black specific a policy or right, but to me, it should be a human right. And it's beyond whatever side you on, you going to know somebody in your life that had to get an abortion, whether they had a miscarriage or something bad happened. Let's keep it a buck. Whether they taking the pills or whether they had to have the traditional ones. Abortion rights are not just some young girl partying too hard and having sex and getting pregnant. Sometimes grown ass women need to have the right or the access to have an abortion because they're trying to start their family, and Mother Nature doesn't Mother Nature the way that you would assume that it's gonna Mother Nature. But I say all of that to say, y'all know the election is coming up. Even if your focus is on what's going on in Gaza, I would love us to just, regardless of who get elected president, Gaza ain't going to be going the way you want it to go. Because if the other person get elected, you can be damn sure he going to bomb that whole place. We got World War III is looming. Y'all. Let me know y'all thoughts, especially around the Fearless Fund, because y'all not can rant all day and I can get mad and start cussing at people, and I don't want to do that because we are adults. But let me know your thoughts about the Fearless Fund. If you think there's something next coming down the pipeline as far as these attacks on minority focused programs, or let me know if this is your first time hearing about it. You can hit me up. Let me know. You can find me at Cornelia on social media. On this week's episode of Black News, we talked about Negro League baseball players, Major League Baseball, and the stats as of present day now that the Negro League stats have been added and merged with Major League Baseball's. We also talked about the Fearless Fund, a Black women-led venture capital firm that is no longer able to provide funding to Black women. Let me know your thoughts about all of these topics, some or none, and I'll check back with you guys next time. That's it for this week's episode of Black News, y'all. Thanks again for supporting the podcast by sharing, liking, subscribing, and rating 5 stars on your favorite podcast app. To find more information about me, you can check me out at Cornelia on social media, as well as on my website, which is cornelia.com. And as always, thanks for supporting, and I'll be back next week with new topics and a new episode.